The courtroom is silent. All eyes are on the man standing in front of the judge. His clothes are worn out, his hands are rough, showing years of hard work. His eyes are filled with worry. The judge looks down at the case file. He flips through the pages, reading carefully. The charge is clear. A minor offense, but it comes with a fine. A fine the man cannot afford. The prosecutor stands up, his voice is firm. Your Honor, the law is the law. The accused failed to pay the required amount. He must face the consequences. The judge doesn't react immediately. He lifts his head and looks at the man. Is this true? He asks, his voice calm but serious. The man nods slowly. His lips tremble as he speaks. Yes, Your Honor, I didn't have the money. I tried, but I have nothing left. His voice cracks. I lost my job, my family, we barely eat. I never wanted to break the law. I had no choice. A few people in the courtroom exchange glances. Some seem indifferent, others curious. The judge keeps looking at the man, studying him. The air feels heavy. No one knows what the judge will say next. Then, after a moment of silence, he speaks. Tell me your story. The man takes a deep breath. His hands shake as he grips the edge of his worn-out jacket. He doesn't want to speak, but he has no choice. I used to work in a factory, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I worked hard, every day, but one day, they let us go. No warning, just like that, said they didn't need so many workers anymore. He pauses, looking down at the floor. The courtroom is silent. I looked for another job, went to every place I could think of. No one was hiring. Weeks turned into months. My savings ran out. My rent was due. My wife, she tried to help, but she was sick. The hospital bills kept coming. I had to choose, pay the bills or buy food for my kids. His voice breaks. He clears his throat, trying to stay composed. I did what I could. Odd jobs. Anything. But it wasn't enough. One night, my youngest was crying from hunger. I couldn't stand it. I went to the store. I didn't steal. I swear, Your Honor, I didn't. But I was short on money, just a few dollars. I begged the cashier to let me pay later, but she called security. They took me away like I was some criminal. He wipes his face with his sleeve. I know what I did was wrong. I know the law is the law. But I wasn't trying to cheat anyone. I was just trying to survive. A murmur spreads through the courtroom. Some people nod in understanding. Others whisper among themselves. The prosecutor watches, his expression unreadable. The judge sits back in his chair. His face is calm, but his eyes seem thoughtful. He doesn't interrupt. He lets the man finish. The man takes another deep breath. I came to court because I respect the law. But I have nothing left. I can't pay the fine. I don't even have bus fare to go home. Silence fills the room. The judge taps his fingers against the desk. The air is thick with anticipation. Then finally, the judge speaks. His words are unexpected. The judge leans forward, his hands clasped together. His eyes stay fixed on the man. The silence in the courtroom feels heavy. Everyone is waiting. You admit to the offense, the judge says slowly. You understand the law. You know there are consequences. The man nods. Yes, Your Honor. The prosecutor clears his throat. His voice is firm. Your Honor, while we may sympathize, the law must be upheld. If we allow exceptions, the system loses its meaning. The judge doesn't react right away. He stays quiet, tapping his fingers against the desk. His expression is unreadable. The room holds its breath. Then the judge sighs. Tell me, he says, looking at the man, when was the last time you had a full meal? The man blinks, caught off guard. He hesitates. I don't remember, Your Honor. Maybe 3 days ago. I make sure my kids eat first. The judge nods as if confirming something in his mind. He turns to the prosecutor. What is the total fine? The prosecutor checks the file. $50, Your Honor. $50. To some, it's nothing. To this man, it's everything. The judge looks back at the man. His voice is calm but firm. The law is not just about punishment. It is about justice. Then he does something no one expects. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out his wallet, and places a crisp bill on the desk. The courtroom gasps. This fine, the judge says, is paid. The man's mouth opens, but no words come out. His hands tremble. His eyes fill with tears. The judge leans back. Case dismissed. The room is frozen. No one moves. No one speaks. They just stare. Then, slowly, the man drops to his knees. Tears roll down his face. He tries to speak, but only one word comes out. Why? The judge doesn't answer right away. Instead, he takes a deep breath. His next words will change everything. The poor man stays on his knees, staring at the judge in disbelief. His lips move but no words come out. His hands shake as he wipes his eyes. The courtroom is dead silent. No one expected this. A judge paying a fine for someone else? It's unheard of. The prosecutor shifts uncomfortably. He clears his throat. Your Honor, with all due respect, this is highly unusual. The judge raises a hand, cutting him off. His voice is steady. I know what I'm doing. He looks back at the poor man. Stand up. The man hesitates, then rises slowly. His legs feel weak. He still can't believe what just happened. Your Honor, why? His voice cracks. The judge exhales, tapping his fingers lightly on the desk. Because justice is not just about punishment. It's about understanding. He gestures toward the courtroom. How many of us in this room have never struggled? How many of us have never needed help? His eyes scan the faces of the people watching. We forget that the law exists to protect, not just to punish. A few people look away. Others nod quietly. The judge picks up the bill again and places it firmly in front of the clerk. This man's fine is paid. Not by charity, not by pity, but because sometimes the right thing to do isn't written in a law book. The man's eyes fill with tears again. He wants to speak, but emotion chokes his words. He lowers his head and whispers, "Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you." The judge doesn't reply right away. Instead, he studies the man. Then, in a softer voice, he asks, "Do you have a way to get home?" The man shakes his head. "No, sir." The judge reaches into his pocket again. He pulls out another bill, smaller this time, but enough for a bus ticket and maybe a warm meal. He hands it over without a word. The man hesitates, then takes it with both hands, as if it's the most valuable thing in the world. The room remains silent. No one knows what to say, but the judge isn't done. He looks at the people in the courtroom and speaks once more. And this time his words leave everyone speechless. The judge takes a deep breath. His gaze moves slowly across the courtroom, landing on each person. He knows they're all waiting for an explanation. Finally, he speaks. "I did this," he says, his voice calm but firm, "because I know what it feels like." A murmur spreads through the room. The poor man looks up, confused. Even the prosecutor seems caught off guard. The judge leans forward slightly. His expression is serious. "Years ago, I stood where this man is standing now. I was young, broke, and desperate. My mother was sick, my father had left. I did everything I could to take care of her, but it wasn't enough." He pauses, his fingers tapping lightly against the desk. The room is completely silent. No one dares to interrupt. "I made a mistake," he continues, "not out of greed, not because I wanted to break the law, but because I had no choice, just like this man." The poor man blinks, stunned. He never expected this. The judge exhales, his eyes lost in memory. "When I stood in front of the court, I expected punishment, I expected shame. But then, something happened. The judge that day looked at me the same way I looked at this man just now, and he did something I never forgot." The room leans in, waiting. "He helped me," the judge says simply. "Not with charity, not with pity, but with a lesson. He told me that my life wasn't over because of one mistake. He gave me a second chance, and that second chance led me here." The courtroom remains frozen. Even the toughest faces in the audience seem moved. The judge looks back at the poor man. "I didn't pay your fine because I feel sorry for you. I paid it because someone once did the same for me, and I never forgot it." The man's eyes glisten with tears. His hands tremble. He nods, unable to speak. The judge straightens his posture. His voice turns firm again. "This does not erase what happened, but I hope it teaches you something. When life gives you another chance, don't waste it." The poor man nods again, this time with determination. The judge looks around the room. "And I hope it teaches all of us something too." Silence. Then, something unexpected happens. Someone in the audience stands up. Then another, and another. One by one, people rise to their feet. No one speaks, but their message is clear. Respect. The judge watches, his face unreadable. He says nothing more. He doesn't need to. The silence in the courtroom is unlike anything before. No one whispers, no one shifts in their seat. People just stand, one by one. The poor man turns, looking at the faces around him. Some have tears in their eyes, others simply nod in respect. Even the prosecutor, usually firm and composed, seems lost in thought. The judge remains seated, watching. He doesn't say a word, he doesn't need to. Then something unexpected happens. A man from the audience steps forward. He clears his throat. "Your Honor," he says, his voice hesitant. I'd like to help." The poor man looks at him, confused. The man continues, I own a small business. It's nothing big, but I could use an extra pair of hands. If this man is willing, I'd like to offer him a job. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The poor man's eyes widen. He struggles to find words. A job? He whispers. The man nods. I believe in second chances too. Before the judge can respond, another person stands. I'd like to help as well, she says. Maybe with food for his family, just to get them through the next few weeks. Then another voice. I run a shelter. If they need a place to stay, we can arrange something. One after another, offers come in. The poor man covers his face with his hands. He's shaking, not from fear, but from overwhelming emotion. He came here expecting punishment. He never imagined leaving with hope. The judge watches, his face calm, but there's something in his eyes, something deep, something unspoken. He doesn't interrupt. He lets it happen. Because this is what justice should look like. The prosecutor, still seated, exhales slowly. He looks at the judge and nods. Just once. A small gesture, but it speaks volumes. The poor man wipes his eyes. He turns back to the judge, his voice shaking. Thank you, he whispers. I won't waste this chance. The judge finally speaks, his voice steady. Then go, and make the most of it. The gavel doesn't slam. The courtroom doesn't rush out. Instead, they just stand there, watching, remembering, because this moment will never be forgotten. The courtroom remains still. The weight of what just happened lingers in the air. The poor man wipes his face, his hands still trembling. He turns to leave, but before stepping away, he looks back at the judge one last time. His eyes hold gratitude but also something more, determination. The judge nods. It's a silent message, a reminder, a challenge. Make this second chance count. As the man walks toward the exit, the crowd slowly begins to follow. Some whisper among themselves. Others walk in silence, deep in thought. But no one leaves unchanged. A journalist in the back scribbles furiously in his notebook. He knows this story will spread, not because of drama, not because of scandal, but because moments like this are rare. Because kindness, when shown in a place of power, is something the world needs to see. The prosecutor gathers his papers, still quiet. Before leaving, he glances at the judge. That was unexpected, he says finally. The judge gives a small smile. Justice isn't always about punishment. The prosecutor nods once, then walks out. The courtroom empties. The energy has shifted. People who came in expecting just another case are leaving with a lesson they never anticipated. And at the center of it all, the judge sits alone for a moment. He looks down at his desk, at the spot where he placed that $50 bill. He exhales, leaning back in his chair. Maybe, just maybe, one act of kindness can change more than one life. He closes the case file. Then, without another word, he stands up and walks away.